Hi there, and welcome. Now it's time for America's favorite podcast, Leave Your Mark, with your host, Vince Cortese.
If it's fly, loose fitted, it's Cortese. If freezing, chubbers in it, it's Cortese.
Leave Your Mark is about inspiring the world, one guest at a time.
Pass the word from Brooklyn to Pittsburgh, from urban to suburb, it's Cortese, you heard?
And here is our host, Vince Cortese.
Leave Your Mark. I'm Vince Cortese, and today's guest is Chuck Ondo. Chuck is an amazing story from a state trooper to a state prisoner. I want to welcome him. He's local from West Mifflin, PA. I'm very excited to hear the details of going from those levels, from that high of a level to that low level. But before we get to that, I want to share the honest little bit about who you are and what childhood was like. Born in West Mifflin, PA, raised, dad was a World War II vet, and mom was a dad was a steelworker. Mother was a homemaker and president of a national ladies charity. Yes, a huge family, 9 people in the house, 7 kids, and you're number 6. Share what that was like in a household full of children.
It's crazy. A couple of years ago, I moved back to take care of my father. And when I moved back, a lot of our conversations would stem around how on earth did we not kill each other growing up in a 900 square foot house, 3 bedrooms, 3 boys in 1 room, 6 kids and 2 adults for most of my life. It was a great home. Dad being a steel worker, mom stayed at home, grew up humble, but always connected to our church and doing church things. And I had a really strong upbringing. I was raised right, good morals, good values.
Now, West Mifflin High School, you graduated in 83 with archery, hunting, fishing, and outdoor activities as your interest, but you beelined for the Marines right out of high school. So share with me what the decision to be a Marine was and what were your intentions behind that?
Yeah, it was a calling. I was this senior in high school running a cross-country meet, and a guy on recruiting duty came back to visit the school. I didn't like the guy the year before. He was arrogant, cocky. Here he came back and he had this quiet confidence about him. He's in his dress blues. It was fall evening. The sun was setting. It was like the skies parted and I felt a calling of, that's what you're going to be. You're going to be a Marine. Funny said, in high school, my mom wanted me to be a priest. I went along with that. First month in high school, I get this calling to go in the Marines. So I remember going home from school that day and saying to my mom, I'm not going to be a priest. I'm going to be a Marine. Her answer was, no way. My father enlisted in World War II at the age of 17. My father enlisted just a couple of weeks after his brother was killed on D-Day. So he had a 19-year-old brother killed in Normandy. 2 weeks later, he enlisted. I went to him. He said, sorry, Chuck, mom's in charge. I had to wait until I graduated high school, until I turned 18. The cool thing, Vince, I enlisted in the Marine Corps at 8 a.m. on my 18th birthday. I was ready to go. One quick story on that note. A few months later was the first bombing in Beirut, Lebanon. October 23rd of 1983, the first big terrorist bombing. 243 Marines were killed. I remember walking into the living room. My mom was watching the news and she said, see, Chuck, this is why I don't want you to be a Marine. I turned to her and said, no, Mom, that's why I have to be. This bombing back in 83 was my 9/11, my natural calling.
How long were you a Marine before you end up going to the Pennsylvania State Academy?
I did 4 years of active duty and 2 years on reserve, got out of the Marines, wasn't sure what I was going to do. And the whole police career was just on a whim. Picked up the newspaper, saw the ads, Pennsylvania State Police giving its exam. So I took it on a whim, and it took about a year to go through that process. But by 1989, I was in the State Police Academy.
How long does that last? State police officers, you guys see it all. It's not like local, you guys get it all. The idea of having the military background and being a Marine and then coming into state police, you're already exposed to a pretty heavy scene. Share with me some of what was going on during this time. It sounds like these all were small ingredients which led up to what eventually happened to you.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I excelled as a police officer in the academy. I was a class leader. I chose to go to Philadelphia. And back then, we weren't allowed to come back to our home area, so I couldn't come back to Pittsburgh. I chose to go to Philadelphia to be busy, and I moved up really quick. I only worked on the highway for about a year, year and a half. Then I spent a good part of my career as an undercover detective. Also, the other thing I was drawn to, the state police has an elite, it's called the Special Emergency Response Team. It's, people think of it as SWAT, but it's called CERT. And once you have 3 years, you can apply. That was a dream of mine, and was able to, like, 300 guys a year try out for it. The year I made it, 2 of us made it. I got to go to FBI sniper school, but being on a SWAT team wasn't a full-time job. I was an undercover detective in South Philadelphia with the mob. So my life could not have been more stressful. Your whole life is a lie. I had a fake ID. I had a fake address. I had a fake name. The names changed. The stories changed, keeping it all together. And I was part of a task force, DEA, FBI, state police, and Philadelphia narcotics. Our targets were a lot of the mobsters in South Philly.
That sounds like something right out of a movie. So the idea,
It's coming out next year. It's being written now.
the title.
State trooper to state prisoner, both sides of the fence.
Okay, I like it. I
Good
like it. So
teaser.
now, so then is this when, or shortly thereafter, your stint there with working undercover? Where do you wind up after that? Sounds like the PTSD and the drugs and the stress of what was happening began to take over. Is that right?
It was a cumulative effect. I was involved in several shootings, working in undercover capacity. I witnessed a murder, was able to catch the bad guy like 20 blocks later. One of my informants was killed, high-risk search warrants, hostage situations, at least a monthly. Initially, you think this is what I signed up for. Back then, it wasn't open to be a police officer and ask for help. I was getting stressed out. I looked at it as, I'm the one that signed up for this. Suck it up. Don't talk to anybody when you're around death and that level of crime. It starts to blur your image. And it was over a several year period, but it was incident after incident. And then what really triggered me, to tell one story of wanting to escape with either drugs or alcohol. After 9 years, I finally took a promotion. I went from trooper to corporal. At that point, you give up undercover work, you cut your hair, beard, and go back in uniform. So I was the corporal in charge of a barracks. And I went to a real small station out in the middle of Pennsylvania. It's called Frackville. And without getting into the full detail, I thought, okay, my life has calmed down, no more craziness. But on my second shift, I got called to an infant drowning. And I ran into this house and I found this little 18-month-old baby in the bottom of a bathtub, gave the little guy CPR in the middle of nowhere. Ambulances don't get there quick. I got the little guy breathing again, and 2 hours later, he died. I came home that night and my son was 18 months old. You think to yourself, did I do enough? During this period, my home life was falling apart, and it was due a lot in part to the job.
I'm excited to share with you the new Invincible Mindset app. What do you really want? Or what's holding you back from having that? Or what do you need to do or become in order to achieve that? If these are some of the questions that you're seeking answers for, click the link below. I believe this app will definitely help you sort your thinking out and help steer you in the right direction.
Was in part, doing part two. I work every night till 3 a.m. in undercover capacity and thought life would get better. But then I have this incident with this kid. Drinking got out of control. One of my responsibilities was the evidence room as a barracks supervisor. And there was some personal things going on in my life, like 2 days after this kid drowned. And normally I would destroy evidence simply by flushing it, or you take it to an incinerator and burn. I remember being in the bathroom. Instead of flushing cocaine, I consumed it. And then my life took on a whole nother level. I was living this double life. Here I was back in uniform, and I would work from 8 to 4, but then from 5 at night until the middle of the night. When I worked undercover, friends would say, aren't you afraid that you're going to fall into that lifestyle? You look the part, you act the part, you talk the part. And I said, no, when I look in the mirror, I see Chuck with a high tie, with a big hat on, in uniform, pressed uniform. Here I was putting on that pressed uniform every day. When I looked in the mirror, I would break out in tears. I saw someone, I referred to myself as a junkie, someone that just could not, was totally could not live without alcohol or drugs. And trying to live that lie was difficult. And that went on for about 6 months.
How soon thereafter do you wind up incarcerated?
After about 6 months, our internal affairs department was doing an investigation on the evidence room. I knew it was just a matter of time until I got caught. I was taking evidence marked to be destroyed, using it and replacing it with baking soda. About 8 months after I had started my addiction, I got arrested. They did an investigation. That's the part of it. And I actually teach classes now. It's called the Center for Addiction Recovery Education. I actually go to police officers and I talk to them about the dangers. It's their way, 20 some years later, to give back, to explain to people how they have to watch, what's happening, everything that they're seeing, all the trauma that you're seeing, the stigma of being a police officer and how that can affect you. And you have to watch and you can't let yourself fall into it. So I consider myself like a friendly fire casualty of America's war on drugs. Here I was thinking I'm trying to save the world. Being around all that stuff constantly gave me the thought that this is a way to escape from reality, because people that I came in contact with, if they were informants or suspects, I would often ask them, like, hey, why do you do this stuff? And the overwhelming response I would get, well, it helps me escape. So here I was wanting to escape. I showed up to work in my 10th year. I was taken into custody and arrested for tampering with evidence. 9 months later, I was sentenced to the state prison system. I was sentenced to 2 to 4 years for tampering with evidence. I only did 14 months inside the state prison system, and I finished the 4 years on parole. I completed all the programming and met all the requirements. And yeah, it was hard to, I never would talk about the fact that I was a cop for probably 2 decades. People, they would meet Chuck as, I owned an asphalt business and went to barber school. I never talked about it until recently, when I got hired back to help police officers, first responders, and starting the nonprofit. It's not a badge of honor. And what I like to say, Vince, is God took my mess and turned it into a message. Having the opportunity to be on here is amazing. Being named Veteran of the Year for the last couple of years. I'll be speaking in Washington, D.C. next week.
Get to your point. This is your lowest point in life, sharing what's going on in jail and the length of time. So 14 months later, you get out of being incarcerated. Share how life begins to take root. Like there's a new person inside of you. Your identity changed. It was like you came into who you were intended to be. So you leave jail and close to homeless. So take me from that point and forward and bring me into where we stand now.
Yeah, it's an evolution. Back when I was incarcerated, I started writing this book, and I thought it would be, I wanted to tell a lot of what it was like to work undercover. At one point, I had a line in the book that says, I once was a cop, now I'm a con. What I like to say now is, I once was a cop, now I'm a con, but God. I turned my life around, was able to get out, restart my life. I got remarried. I had a daughter, so I have a son and a daughter now. And life really returned to normalcy, where alcohol and drugs weren't part of it. It wasn't until 2015, another 10 or 12 years later, that alcohol crept back into my life. I was getting DUIs and being arrested for public drunkenness, disorderly conduct, and fighting. I was on the verge of homelessness and had an encounter with a pastor in a barbershop cutting his hair. And he changed my life. And that's put me on the direction I'm on now, with the nonprofit that I run, with helping pretty much every day now, Vince. I'll work with someone that was either a veteran, a police officer, a first responder that's struggling with drugs or alcohol.
Now that is your Semper Fi mission?
Correct.
You're seriously involved in that. Share with me about your speaking with the Legacy Church and the ministry.
Yeah, very quickly after I gave my life to God, God put it on my heart. I was teaching police officers. That was the start, the first 180-degree switch. I wasn't embarrassed to tell anyone again that, hey, I had served time at one point. I didn't wear it as a badge of honor, but I told people what to watch out for. So while I was doing that, I was teaching classes to the Allegheny County Adult Probation here in Pittsburgh. And one of the officers there invited me to come into veterans court. So there's a whole court system set up for veterans. It's like an extended probation period. They wanted me to come in and tell my story of how I restarted my life. From that meeting, the judge that oversaw that, she was friends with the warden at the Allegheny County Jail. They then asked me to come in. A big part of the Semper Fi mission is prison ministry. Just last Monday, I did my 71st visit inside of Allegheny County Jail. I go every Monday on my day off. We do a prison ministry. We do homeless outreach. We have a mentorship program. We own a veterans recovery house. We run it. It's out in Clairton, where we have an old church rectory that we turned into a mentorship house for these men, get them back on track. And we walk with them every step of the way. And I use my past experiences to give people strength and hope. You know, it really hits home when I'm talking to these people. Most people that come into a prison setting, like a chaplain or a public speaker, don't understand what it's like. But I tell those guys, I know what it's like to be in a red jumpsuit. If you can make a phone call. I went from controlling society as a police officer to being totally controlled, you know, every step of your life. So when you can relate to those, and I've developed a network of people that come in with me regularly. Once they get out, we've been given a building in downtown Pittsburgh on the Boulevard of the Allies that we're going to turn into the Semper Fi Hope and Recovery House. It's going to get to about 12 floors. That's what got me into the Legacy Church, just meeting people. People hear my story and they asked me to come in. They asked me to preach or share my testimony. I feel called to do that because there's been so many people that I have personally been able to impact and help get their life back on a direct course. My biggest challenge was time. I'm still a full-time barber. I've got my personal life balanced. We let everyone know it's a mind, body, and spirit transition. My recovery is balanced, but what keeps me sober is the number of guys that have my phone number that call me. Hey, Chuck, I need help. Chuck, I need a job. Chuck, I'm struggling to, my PTS is kicking in. I feel a fiduciary duty to these people to answer that call. That keeps me sober. We're building a small army of Chucks out there. I've got a mission. His name is Ken. He was a combat injured Marine, addicted to pain pills. After 8 years, he gets booted out because he can't pass the drug test. He was a homeless heroin addict in Pittsburgh for 3 years.
Wow.
He recently was the chief of staff for a state representative and the veterans liaison to Congress with Congressman DeLuzio. He and I both have these career paths where we were once here, hit rock bottom, and now we're back up at the level higher than ever. It's a joy to give people hope.
It is. You're doing a nice job. What is the most important thing you've learned in your life?
To never give up. No matter where you are, never stop trying to make a difference, because every little thing that you do matters to someone. That minute that you talk to someone and hand them a bottle of water and tell them, hey, buddy, you're going to be okay. You give them that shred of hope. I just will never stop.
And now, how would you like to leave your mark?
It's threefold. I want to let people know you don't have to be perfect. All you have to do is have faith, and you have to trust in God. As my mark, I recently became a grandfather. I'll be 60 this year, and I have this beautiful relationship with my kids now. I'm married. I have a very successful barbershop business. So my legacy will be my Semper Fi mission and the countless people we help on a weekly, daily, and monthly basis.
Thank you for coming by today. You shared a huge glimmer of light on here. It's great to see somebody that gone through what you have and to be as bright as you are. You found yourself. That's what we're all about. Thank you for being our guest.
I'm honored to be on here.
You just left your mark. Thanks for listening. Listen to more episodes on demand. Just click Leave Your Mark with Vince Cortese.
Inside the Invincible Mindset app are the techniques and the things that I use to help me survive a 6-year battle with cancer. I'm sure that you'll find the content in the app appealing. Click the link below.